The sun had barely crested the horizon when Lucas Grayson pulled his weathered pickup truck into a quiet parking lot across from Grayson Motors' flagship dealership. From this vantage point, he could see the gleaming glass facade of the showroom, the rows of polished cars glistening under the early morning light, and the bold sign bearing his name in sharp, confident letters. It was a sight that once filled him with pride, a testament to decades of grit, late nights, and a dream that had grown from a single used car lot into a thriving chain of 15 locations across 3 states. But now, as he sat in the cab of his truck, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos, that pride was overshadowed by a gnawing unease. Lucas had always believed in building something honest. He'd started with nothing, no family money, no connections, just a knack for fixing cars and a stubborn refusal to give up. Over 30 years, he'd turned Grayson Motors into a name people trusted, a place where folks could find a reliable ride without being fleeced. But lately, something felt off. Customer reviews online had taken a sharp turn, complaints about pushy salespeople, inflated prices, and deals that fell apart after the ink dried. His regional managers brushed it off as isolated incidents, blaming entitled customers or economic pressures. "It's just business, Mr. Grayson," they'd say, their voices smooth and rehearsed. But Lucas wasn't buying it. He'd spent too long earning his reputation to let it erode under a pile of excuses. He adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of himself, gray hair creeping past his temples, lines etched deep into his forehead from years of hard decisions. At 62, he wasn't the young hustler who'd bartered for his first lot anymore, but he still had the instincts that had carried him this far. And those instincts were screaming that something was rotten at the heart of his empire. The problem was, he couldn't trust the reports filtering up through the chain of command. If his people were hiding something, he'd never get the truth from a corner office. He needed to see it for himself. That's why he was here, parked in a beat-up truck instead of his usual sleek sedan, wearing a faded flannel shirt and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. With the help of an old friend, a retired theater makeup artist named Clara, Lucas had transformed into Jim Carver, a scruffy, unassuming everyman. Clara had worked her magic, a fake beard, a subtle prosthetic to soften his jawline, and a pair of scratched-up glasses that dulled the sharpness of his gaze. She'd even coached him on slouching a bit, letting his shoulders sag like a man who'd carried too much for too long. When he'd looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself, and that was exactly the point. Lucas took a deep breath and stepped out of the truck, his boots crunching on the gravel. He crossed the street, limping slightly, a touch Clara had insisted on to sell the disguise, and approached the dealership lot. The air buzzed with the hum of early morning traffic, but the lot itself was quiet, the salespeople not yet in full swing. A few cars gleamed under the dawn light, their price tags fluttering in the breeze. Lucas let his eyes wander, taking it all in, but his attention quickly shifted to a figure standing near the edge of the used car section. She was a woman in her late 30s, dressed in a worn coat and clutching a frayed purse. Her posture was tense, her movements hesitant as she peered at a modest hatchback with a "certified pre-owned" sticker on the windshield. Lucas drifted closer, pretending to inspect a nearby pickup, but kept her in his peripheral vision. She ran a hand through her hair, muttering something to herself, then glanced toward the showroom as if bracing for a fight. Before Lucas could decide whether to approach her, a salesman emerged from the glass doors. He was young, mid-20s, maybe, with slicked back hair and a suit that looked a size too big. His name tag read Dylan, and his stride was all swagger, like a kid playing at being a shark. He zeroed in on the woman, his grin widening as he sized her up. "Morning, ma'am," Dylan said, his tone bright but edged with something sharper. "See something you like?" The woman turned, startled, then nodded. "Yeah, this one," she said, gesturing to the hatchback. "I need something for work. My van died last week, and I've got 2 kids to get to school. I don't have a big budget, though." Dylan's grin faltered for a split second, but he recovered fast. No worries, we've got options for everyone. Let's talk numbers. What are we working with? She hesitated, clutching her purse tighter. I can do maybe $500 down, and I was hoping for payments under $200 a month. I've got a steady job, but things are tight. Lucas watched Dylan's expression shift, subtle, but unmistakable. The salesman's eyes flicked over her coat, her scuffed boots, her nervous hands. $500 down, huh? He said, his voice dipping into a mocking lilt. And $200 a month? Sweetheart, this isn't a charity lot. That hatchback's a steal at $12,000, certified, low miles. You're looking at closer to $350 a month, and that's if your credit's decent. Which, no offense, I'm guessing it's not. The woman's face flushed, her shoulders hunching. I thought maybe with financing. Financing? Dylan cut her off, laughing loud enough to draw a glance from another salesman lounging by the entrance. Lady, with $500 down and a budget like that, you'd be lucky to finance a skateboard. Look, I'll level with you, this place isn't for bargain hunters. Maybe try the junkyard down the road. They've got some real gems for your price range. Lucas felt a surge of heat in his chest, his fists clenching at his sides. The woman's eyes glistened, but she held her ground. I just need something reliable, she said, her voice trembling. I'm not trying to waste your time. Oh, you're not wasting my time, Dylan shot back, crossing his arms. You're just wasting your own. Look, I've got real customers to deal with. If you can't swing a deal, that's on you. He turned, already dismissing her, and called over his shoulder, good luck, though. The woman stood frozen, staring at the hatchback as Dylan sauntered off. A few other salespeople snickered from the sidelines, their heads bent together like they were sharing a private joke. Lucas's jaw tightened so hard his teeth ached. This wasn't just one bad apple, this was the kind of casual cruelty that festered when no one cared to stop it. He'd seen enough to know his dealership had a problem, but he needed more than a single incident to understand how deep it ran. He forced himself to stay in character, limping over to a beat-up coupe as if he hadn't noticed the exchange. But his mind was racing. That woman wasn't just a customer, she was the kind of person he'd built this business for. Someone struggling, needing a break, not a kick in the teeth. And his own people had turned her away like she was nothing. Lucas glanced back as the woman started toward the exit, her head down, her steps heavy. He couldn't let her leave like that, not without doing something. He adjusted his cap and shuffled after her, keeping his voice low and rough to match Jim Carver. Excuse me, ma'am, he called, catching up just as she reached the sidewalk. She turned, wary, and he raised a hand. I couldn't help overhearing back there. That wasn't right, what he said. She blinked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It's fine. I should have known better than to come here. No, Lucas said, shaking his head. You shouldn't have to expect that. Look, I know a guy who deals in fair used cars, not far from here. No pressure, no games. Can I give you his info? Her eyes narrowed, searching his face. Why would you do that? Because I've been where you are, Lucas lied, the words coming easy. And I hate seeing people get kicked when they're down. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. I'm Sarah, by the way. Jim, Lucas replied, pulling out his phone. What's your number, Sarah? I'll make sure you hear from someone who'll treat you right. She gave it to him, her expression softening slightly. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. As she walked away, Lucas saved her contact, his resolve hardening. He'd come here to uncover the truth, and he'd found it, or at least the beginning of it. But this was just the first step. He turned back to the dealership, the glass doors reflecting the rising sun. Whatever rot had taken hold, he was going to rip it out, root and stem. And he'd start today. Lucas Grayson, still cloaked in the guise of Jim Carver, stepped back onto the lot of Grayson Motors, the weight of what he'd just witnessed pressing against his ribs like a coiled spring. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the rows of cars, their chrome trim winking in the light. The dealership was waking up now, salespeople adjusting their ties, sipping coffee from branded mugs, and scanning the horizon for fresh marks. Lucas kept his head low, his cap shading his eyes, but his senses were sharp, drinking in every detail. Sarah's humiliation had lit a fire in him, but he needed more than a single spark to burn down the mess he suspected was festering here. He wandered toward the showroom, his limp more pronounced as he leaned into the role of a weary, down-on-his-luck everyman. The glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside, the air cool and laced with the faint scent of polish and new upholstery. The space was pristine, marble floors, sleek displays, a coffee bar humming in the corner, but beneath the polish, Lucas felt an undercurrent of tension, like a stage set waiting for the next act. A saleswoman approached him, her heels clicking against the floor. She was older than Dylan, maybe mid-40s, with sharp cheekbones and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name tag read Marlene. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "Looking for something special today?" Lucas scratched at his fake beard, keeping his tone gruff. "Just something that runs. Don't need anything fancy, used is fine. Got a budget to stick to." Marlene's smile tightened, a flicker of calculation passing through her gaze. "Of course. We've got plenty in the pre-owned section. Mind if I ask what you're working with, budget-wise?" "About $8,000, all in," Lucas said, watching her closely. "Cash, no financing." Her eyebrows lifted slightly, and he caught the shift, an opportunity for a quick close, no paperwork hassle. "Cash is king," she said, her tone warming. "Let me show you a couple options. Follow me." She led him back outside to the used car lot, her stride brisk but deliberate. As they walked, Lucas noticed how her eyes darted toward the other salespeople, a silent signal that she'd claimed this one. They stopped at a compact SUV, its silver paint chipped at the edges but the tires new. "This one's $7,900, Marlene said, patting the hood. "Good mileage, solid engine. Perfect for someone who needs reliability without breaking the bank." Lucas nodded, crouching to inspect the undercarriage. "Looks decent. Any wiggle room on the price?" Marlene hesitated, then leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Tell you what, I can knock it down to $7,500, cash deal, off the books. Manager doesn't need to know. We both win." Lucas froze, his heart thudding. "Off the books?" He straightened slowly, keeping his expression neutral. "That's a nice offer. Why the discount?" She shrugged, her smile turning sly. "Let's just say I like helping people out when I can. Plus, it's one less car sitting here collecting dust." He didn't buy it. This wasn't generosity, it was a hustle. Cash under the table meant no taxes, no records, and probably a cut for her on the side. He'd seen this kind of thing in his early days, back when he was scraping by, but he'd stamped it out when Grayson Motors grew. Or so he'd thought. "I'll think on it," he said, stepping back. "Mind if I browse a bit more?" Marlene's smile faltered, but she recovered fast. "Sure thing. Take your time. I'll be around." As she walked off, Lucas's mind churned. One salesman mocking a struggling mother, now another skimming deals under the radar. This wasn't just a few bad hires, it was a pattern. He needed to dig deeper, see how far the rot spread. He drifted toward the service bay, where a handful of mechanics in grease-stained coveralls were tinkering with an engine. The clatter of tools and the sharp smell of oil greeted him as he lingered near the open garage doors, pretending to admire a lifted truck nearby. A mechanic glanced up, young, wiry, with a mop of dark hair under his cap. His name tag read Tomas. He wiped his hands on a rag and nodded at Lucas. "You lost, man." "Nah," Lucas said, chuckling. "Just killing time. You guys do good work here?" Tomas grinned, but there was an edge to it. "We try. Depends on what the suits up front let us fix. Half the time, they tell us to slap a band-aid on it and send it back out." Lucas raised an eyebrow, leaning against the truck. "That so? Thought this place prided itself on quality." Tomas snorted, tossing the rag onto a workbench. "Used to, maybe. Now it's all about turnover. Customer comes in with a rattling engine, we're told to quiet it down just enough to get it off the lot. Next thing you know, they're back in a month, pissed off and out of warranty." Lucas's stomach twisted. "And the bosses are fine with that?" "They don't care as long as the numbers look good," Tomas said, his voice dropping. "Service manager's the worst, guy named Vince. He's all about cutting corners. Tells us to reuse parts, skip diagnostics if it takes too long. Says it's efficient." Lucas nodded slowly, filing the name away. "Vince. Another link in the chain. Sounds rough. You ever push back?" Tomas shrugged. "Tried once. Got written up for insubordination. Learned to keep my head down after that." Before Lucas could press further, a shadow loomed in the doorway. A man in a crisp blazer stepped into the bay, his presence silencing the hum of conversation. He was broad-shouldered, late 50s, with a slick comb-over and a scowl that could curdle milk. His name tag confirmed it, Vince, service manager. "Tomas," he barked, "you on break or what? That sedan's due out in an hour." Tomas straightened, his grin vanishing. "On it, boss." Vince's eyes flicked to Lucas, narrowing. "You a customer?" "Just looking," Lucas said, tipping his cap. "Nice setup you got here." Vince grunted, unimpressed, and turned back to Tomas. "Less chatting, more wrenching. Move it." He stalked off, leaving a chill in his wake. Lucas watched him go, his pulse quickening. Vince wasn't just cutting corners, he was enforcing a system designed to squeeze every dime out of customers, even if it meant shoddy work. This was worse than he'd feared. He thanked Tomas with a nod and wandered back toward the showroom, his mind racing. He needed to test the sales floor again, see if the rot extended beyond Dylan and Marlene. Inside, he approached a desk where a finance officer sat, a wiry man with a pinched face and a name tag reading, Greg. Lucas played his part, asking about a sedan he'd seen outside, $10,000, modest but clean. Greg launched into a pitch, his fingers flying over a calculator. "We can do $200 down, $300 a month, 48 months. Best rate you'll find." Lucas frowned, doing the math in his head. "That's $14,400 total. Car's only $10,000. Greg didn't blink. "Interest, fees, processing, adds up. Standard stuff." "Pretty steep interest," Lucas said, pushing. "What's the rate?" Greg waved a hand. "Don't worry about the rate. Focus on the monthly, it's affordable, right?" Lucas leaned forward, his voice firm. "I'd like to know the rate." Greg's smile thinned. "It's 18%. Market's tight, credit's a factor. Take it or leave it. 18%. Highway robbery for a used car loan." Lucas sat back, feigning indecision. "I'll sleep on it." Greg shrugged, already turning to his computer. "Suit yourself. Offer's good till tomorrow." Lucas stood, his blood simmering. 18%, hidden fees, off-the-books deals, and half-assed repairs, This wasn't a dealership anymore, it was a machine built to prey on people. He stepped outside, the midday sun harsh against his face, and pulled out his phone. He texted Sarah's number, "Jim here. Got a lead on a car for you. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., same lot. No tricks." Her reply came fast, "Thanks, Jim. I'll be there." He pocketed the phone, his jaw tight. Tomorrow, he'd drop the mask. Tomorrow, he'd start tearing this place apart. But for now, he had one more day to play Jim Carver, and he intended to use every minute to expose the truth. The next morning broke with a gray sky, heavy clouds rolling in from the west as if mirroring the storm brewing in Lucas Grayson's chest. He arrived at Grayson Motors before the lot stirred to life, parking his battered pickup a block away and walking the rest of the distance. The air was thick with the promise of rain, a damp chill seeping through his flannel shirt as he adjusted his cap and limped toward the dealership. Today wasn't just about gathering evidence, it was about drawing a line in the sand. He'd seen enough to know his business had strayed far from the vision he'd poured his life into, and he was done playing spectator. Inside the showroom, the atmosphere felt different, tighter, like a rubber band stretched to its limit. The sales team was in full swing now, voices overlapping as they pitched deals to early customers. Lucas kept his head down, blending into the shuffle, but his eyes were everywhere. He spotted Marlene near the coffee bar, laughing with a coworker, her sly grin a reminder of yesterday's under-the-table offer. Dylan lounged by the entrance, scrolling on his phone, oblivious to the customers he'd dismissed. And in the service bay, visible through the glass partition, Tomas hunched over an engine, his movements quick and mechanical under Vince's looming shadow. Lucas's plan was simple, one final test to confirm the depth of the dysfunction, then a confrontation that would leave no room for excuses. He drifted toward the used car lot, where a small crowd had gathered, a mix of browsers and serious buyers. Among them, he saw Sarah, right on time at 10 a.m., standing near the hatchback she'd eyed yesterday. Her coat was buttoned tight against the wind, her expression a blend of hope and skepticism. Lucas approached her slowly, tipping his cap. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and rough as Jim Carver. "Glad you came back." She turned, offering a faint smile. "Hey, Jim. You really think they'll cut me a fair deal this time?" "They will," Lucas said, his tone firm. "I'll make sure of it. Let's get you inside." She nodded, following him toward the showroom. As they stepped through the doors, Lucas caught Dylan's eye. The young salesman straightened, pocketing his phone, and sauntered over, his smirk already in place. "Back again, huh?" he said, glancing at Sarah before flicking his gaze to Lucas. "What's this, a 2-for-1 special?" Lucas ignored the jab. "She's here for the hatchback, $500 down, payments under $200 a month. Can you make it work?" Dylan's smirk widened, his eyes glinting with mockery. "Oh, I remember you," he said to Sarah. "Still chasing that fairy tale budget? Look, I told you yesterday, this isn't a thrift store. That car's $12,000. You're dreaming if you think $500 down gets you anywhere near $200 a month." Sarah's shoulders slumped, but Lucas stepped forward, his voice steady. "She's got a job. Steady income. You telling me you can't find a financing plan that fits?" Dylan laughed, loud and sharp. "Buddy, I don't care if she's the Queen of England. With that down payment and her vibe," he gestured at her worn coat, "her credit's probably trash. Best I can do is $400 a month, and that's me being generous. Take it or walk." Lucas's fists clenched, but he kept his cool. "Get your manager." Dylan rolled his eyes. "Fine, waste my time." He waved over a man in a navy suit, mid-40s, broad jaw, and a gait that screamed authority. His name tag read, Paul, sales manager. Paul approached, his expression a mix of irritation and indifference. What's the problem? Paul asked, barely glancing at Sarah. Your guy here says $400 a month is the best he can do, Lucas said, nodding at Dylan. She needs that hatchback, $500 down, under $200 monthly. Can you make it happen? Paul sized Sarah up, then sighed. Look, we're not a charity. That car's priced fair, $12,000. With $500 down, you're talking high interest, maybe 20%, plus fees, $400's realistic. Anything less, and we're losing money. Lucas's blood boiled. 20% interest on a used car, tacked with fees, for someone like Sarah? This wasn't business, it was extortion. He took a slow breath, then dropped the act. Paul, he said, his voice shifting from Jim's gravelly drawl to the crisp, commanding tone of Lucas Grayson. You're telling me Grayson Motors can't afford to help a working mother without gouging her? Paul blinked, confusion creasing his brow. Who are you? Lucas peeled off the cap, removed the glasses, and ran a hand through his hair, letting the disguise fall away. The showroom went quiet, heads turning as recognition rippled through the staff. I'm Lucas Grayson, he said, his gaze locking onto Paul. And I built this company to be better than this. Dylan's smirk vanished, his face paling. Paul's mouth opened, then snapped shut. Sarah stared, wide-eyed, clutching her purse like a lifeline. From the corner of his eye, Lucas saw Marlene freeze mid-sip at the coffee bar, Greg the finance officer peering over his desk, and Vince stepping out of the service bay, drawn by the sudden hush. Mr. Grayson, Paul stammered, I didn't know. You didn't need to, Lucas cut in, his voice like steel. I've been here 2 days, watching. I saw Dylan humiliate this woman yesterday, laughing her off the lot. I saw Marlene offer me a cash deal under the table. I heard from your mechanics about Vince pushing shoddy repairs. And now you're standing here, justifying a 20% rate like it's standard practice. Paul swallowed hard. Sir, we're just trying to keep the numbers. Enough, Lucas snapped, his eyes sweeping the room. This isn't about numbers. This is about people. Sarah here needs a car to get her kids to school, to keep her job. And you're treating her like a mark to fleece. That's not what Grayson Motors stands for, or it's not supposed to. Dylan shifted, his bravado crumbling. Look, I was just. You're done, Lucas said, turning to him. Pack your things and go. You don't mock customers and keep a job here. Dylan's face reddened, but he didn't argue. He stormed off, shoving past a coworker. Lucas shifted his focus to Paul. And you're the sales manager. You let this happen. Encouraged it, even. Why? Paul straightened, grasping for control. Mr. Grayson, this is how the industry works. We push hard, we maximize profit. If we don't, competitors eat us alive. Lucas stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. I don't care how the industry works. I care how my company works. And this? He gestured at the showroom, at Sarah standing silently beside him. This isn't it. You're fired, Paul. Clear out your office. Paul's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly and walked away. Lucas turned to the rest of the staff, their faces a mix of shock and fear. Anyone else want to defend this? Step up now. No one moved. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the coffee machine. Lucas exhaled, then faced Sarah. Ma'am, I'm sorry. You'll get that car, $500 down, $180 a month, fair terms. No tricks. Her eyes welled up. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Lucas said, offering a small smile. This place has a long way to go. He turned back to the staff, his voice rising. Things change today. No more predatory loans, no more cutting corners, no more treating people like paychecks. We're going back to what this company was built on: honesty, quality, respect. If you can't handle that, leave. If you can, step up. Marlene set her coffee down, her expression unreadable. Greg sank lower in his chair. Tomas, still in the service bay, gave a slight nod, a spark of relief in his eyes. Lucas pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Clara," he said when his makeup artist friend answered. "Disguise is off. I need you to get me the regional managers. Conference call, 1 hour. We've got work to do." He hung up, his gaze settling on the showroom. The storm outside was breaking, rain tapping against the glass, but inside, a different kind of reckoning had begun. Lucas knew this was just the start. Rebuilding trust would take time, and he'd have to root out every last trace of the corruption he'd uncovered. But for the first time in months, he felt the old fire reignite. Grayson Motors was his, and he'd fight to make it right. The rain had settled into a steady drizzle by the time Lucas Grayson stood alone in the showroom of Grayson Motors, the echoes of his earlier confrontation still lingering in the air. The staff had dispersed, some to their desks, others to whisper in corners, and a few, like Dylan and Paul, to gather their belongings and leave for good. Sarah had stayed long enough to sign the paperwork for her hatchback, her hands trembling as she accepted the keys from a chastened Greg, who'd walked her through every detail with uncharacteristic care. She'd thanked Lucas again, her voice thick with gratitude, before driving off into the wet morning, a small victory in a day that felt like the beginning of a war. Lucas paced the marble floor, the sound of his boots muted against the polished surface. The dealership was quieter now, the frenetic energy of the sales floor replaced by a cautious stillness. He could feel the eyes of his remaining employees on him, their uncertainty palpable. He'd torn open the wound, exposed the rot, but the real work, stitching it back together, started now. He wasn't naive enough to think a single speech would undo years of bad habits, but he was damn sure it would set the tone for what came next. His phone buzzed in his pocket. "Clara, right on time." "Lucas," she said when he answered, her voice crisp despite the early hour. "Managers are on the line. You ready?" "Patch them through," he replied, moving to a small office off the showroom. He shut the door behind him, the glass walls offering a view of the lot as he sat at the desk. The conference call connected with a faint crackle, and 7 voices greeted him, his regional managers, scattered across the chain, each responsible for multiple locations. They sounded tense, likely already briefed by gossip trickling from the flagship store. "Morning," Lucas said, his tone clipped. "I'm keeping this short. I went undercover here the last 2 days. What I found was a disgrace: salespeople mocking customers, managers pushing predatory loans, service cutting corners so bad it's a miracle we're not sued daily. This isn't isolated. It's systemic. And it stops now." A chorus of murmurs erupted, defensive, surprised, some feigning ignorance. Lucas cut through it. "Don't waste my time with excuses. I've got names, dates, deals. Dylan, Paul, Marlene, Vince, they're just the start. I want reports from every location by end of day, every complaint, every shady practice, every employee who's part of this. You hide anything, you're out." "Mr. Grayson," a voice piped up, "Ellen, manager of the Eastern region, we've been hitting targets. Sales are up 15% this quarter. That's what you wanted, right?" "Sales built on lies aren't worth a damn," Lucas shot back. "I didn't build this company to fleece people. We're going back to fair pricing, honest service, and treating customers like they matter. You can't handle that, resign. Meeting's over." He hung up, the silence in the office heavy. He leaned back in the chair, rubbing his temples. The managers would scramble, some to comply, others to cover their tracks, but he'd deal with them later. Right now, he needed to prove to his team here that this wasn't just talk. He stepped back into the showroom, where a handful of employees lingered, waiting for direction. "Tomas," he called, spotting the mechanic near the service bay. The young man jogged over, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "You said Vince pushed shoddy repairs." "Show me." Tomas hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." He led Lucas to a sedan in the bay, its hood propped open. "This came in last week, customer said it was overheating. Vince told us to flush the radiator and call it done. Didn't want us checking the head gasket, 'cause it'd take too long. Bet you anything it's blown." Lucas peered at the engine, his years as a grease-stained hustler kicking in. "Pull it apart. I want proof." Tomas grabbed his tools, and within 20 minutes, he'd exposed the gasket, cracked and leaking, just as he'd suspected. "See," he said, holding up the damaged part. "This car's been back 3 times. Customer's furious, but Vince wouldn't let us fix it right." Lucas nodded, his jaw tight. "From now on, you fix it properly, time be damned. I'll deal with the cost. Anyone gives you grief, send them to me." Tomas's eyes widened, a flicker of respect breaking through his guarded demeanor. "Yes, sir." Next, Lucas turned to Greg, still hunched at his finance desk. "You," he said, pointing. "That 18% rate you quoted me yesterday, how often do you pull that?" Greg shifted, his Adam's apple bobbing. "It's standard for subprime credit. Maybe half our deals?" "Half," Lucas repeated, his voice flat. "Starting today, no rate over 10% unless I sign off. And every customer gets a breakdown, every fee, every term, in plain English. Got it?" Greg nodded quickly. "Got it, Mr. Grayson." Lucas scanned the room, raising his voice. "That goes for everyone. Transparency's the rule now. No hidden fees, no pressure, no shortcuts. We make money by being the best, not the sneakiest. Questions?" Marlene stepped forward, her arms crossed. "Sir, I've been here 10 years. We've always pushed hard, it's how we survive. You sure this'll work?" Lucas met her gaze, unflinching. "It worked when I started with 1 lot and a handshake. It'll work now. You in or out?" She held his stare, then nodded slowly. "In." "Good," he said. "Prove it." The day stretched on, Lucas moving between the showroom, the lot, and the service bay, issuing orders and watching the shift take root. By afternoon, the rain had stopped, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Customers trickled in, some wary, others unaware of the upheaval. Lucas lingered near the entrance, listening as Marlene walked a young couple through a deal, no slick tricks, just facts. In the bay, Tomas and another mechanic tore into a truck's suspension, fixing what Vince had ignored. Greg typed up a loan at 8%, explaining every line to a skeptical retiree. It wasn't perfect, old habits died hard, and Lucas caught a salesman slipping into a hard sell, only to correct himself under his boss's glare, but it was a start. Word was spreading too. Sarah had called, her voice bright, saying she'd told her coworkers about the deal she'd gotten. A man in a worn jacket approached Lucas, hesitant, asking if the new rules were real. Lucas assured him they were, and the man left with a sedan and a handshake. By evening, Lucas stood outside, the lot glowing under the setting sun. His phone buzzed with emails, reports from the managers, some detailed, others suspiciously vague. He'd sift through them tonight, but for now, he watched his team close up. Tomas waved as he left, a tired grin on his face. Marlene locked the showroom, catching Lucas's eye with a nod, not warm, but respectful. He walked to his truck, the weight of the day settling into his bones. Grayson Motors wasn't fixed, not yet. Trust took time, and he'd have to fire more, hire better, retrain the rest. But as he climbed into the cab, he felt something he hadn't in years: control. This was his company again, not a machine running on greed, but a place that could mean something. His phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah: "Told my boss. He's coming tomorrow. Thanks, Jim, or whoever you are." Lucas smiled, typing back, "Lucas. Tell him to ask for me." He started the engine, the rumble steady and familiar. Tomorrow, he'd be back, no disguise, no games, just a man fighting to reclaim what he'd built. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in months, he knew where it led. Grayson Motors would rise again, not on the backs of its customers, but beside them. And Lucas Grayson would be there, every step of the way, to make damn sure of it.